Okay, it looks like we are live. Hey, everyone. This is Beverly Jacobson, and I'm so excited to share with you and to introduce to you my friend, Claire, longtime friend. We've known each other over a couple decades now. I think we met when our little family, we just had baby Karis at the time, moved to Ohio, where we were stationed with the Air Force. And Claire and I connected, I think, through our Sunday school class at church. She had three little ones, and I was pregnant with our second. And we both went to Cedarville. So I think we didn't know each other at Cedarville.
I'm much
Yeah, but that was a connection point as well. Anyways, so we kind of followed her family to the DC area, and then they hosted us when we were traveling through, and we've just enjoyed keeping in touch through the years. But when we were setting up this group, Homeschooling for the Long Haul, and thinking about how could we help other moms that are on this homeschool journey, thinking that they're going to do this long term, but those of us who have done it for a while, there's burnout, there's hard stuff that you just have to get through, and your homeschool calendar doesn't always look the way that you might want it to look. But Claire has just been such an encouragement and blessing to me. I started reading her blog years ago. I don't know if you're still doing that. She's like, no. But those early years when I was just gleaning all the information I could get, preparing for our own homeschool journey, that we believed that we were going to at least homeschool elementary, but then decided to do this long term. So that's another story. Anyways, so welcome, Claire. Thank you so much for setting aside some time for us and being willing to share your story. So I'm just going to have you give us, first of all, a brief overview of what made you decide or know that you were going to homeschool. And then at the beginning, did you plan to do this all the way through high school, or were you like us and maybe we'll just try it for a few years? Go ahead and share what brought you to this journey.
Okay. Well, I did not have really any intent of homeschooling or even of having a big family. So that's definitely, God worked in that as well, like your story. But when we were stationed in Colorado, and we had just had our first baby back in 1997, we had really good friends of ours that at that point in time had 3 kids, and they were homeschooling. Their oldest was about 10. And they ended up living with us in our house for 8 months while they were trying to sell a house that they had at a previous, actually here at Right Pat, and then get into their house that they were buying there in Colorado. And so the Lorenzinis homeschooled their kids. And so I just lived that, for those 8 months with my newborn little baby, or, ended up being 8 months old by the end. But, and I was like, oh, okay, I could do this. And I like the flexibility. And I love their kids and their family. So that was a very positive experience for me. And so I thought, okay. But of course it was not like, let's homeschool through the long haul for 30 years or whatever. It was more like, well, let's try it 1 year at a time. Let's just see. I knew personality wise that I needed to start with them young, because if I sent them off to school, I would probably never make the leap. I was like, no, we need to kind of ease into it. And so that's what we did. And then we've just kept on going. And so now we've graduated 4 and we still have 6 left at home. So we have a total of 10 kids, and our first 4 were boys. We have a pyramid. We have 4 boys, then 3 girls, then 2 more boys, then 1 last girl. So it's this pattern. So we've got the 4 boys out of the house. They've graduated, and then our oldest now still at home is going to be a junior this year.
Wow. Okay. So tell us about the ages. You have junior, and then of the one, well, go ahead and tell us all your kids.
Okay. Yeah. So our oldest is just turned 25. So we have 25, 23, 20, 19, and then Anna is 16, 15, 13, 11, 9, and Verity is 7, but she'll be 8 in September. So,
and for those who know our family, our Verity was kind of named after their Verity, not necessarily in a namesake way, but we loved the meaning of the name. So that's always fun for me to hear the name elsewhere, because I've not known anyone else named Verity. Okay, so you are still in the trenches, homeschooling 6 6 kids at home, 4 launched. Yay. Congratulations, Mama.
Thank
That's
you.
an amazing, amazing accomplishment. We just graduated our 3rd. So we're, our kids are kind of intermingled there. We have a lot of similar ages. So you took it, step by step, just 1 year at a time. And then at some point you must have known, okay, this is more than just an academic thing. This is becoming a lifestyle, right? What was there a pivotal point, or did you just kind of grow into this slow realization that, this is our family. This is what God has called us to?
It was definitely a growing. And at some point, people were always like, oh, it must just be so much work to homeschool. But then I was thinking, I have all these little babies. It would also be just as much work to send them all to school, because I see my friends that have kids at school and they have all these random projects and things that they're having to bring in, and volunteering at the classroom and on field trips. And really, it's different work, but is it any less work? I don't know. It's just different. And what would I do with all these little kids? Here we can all pile on the couch and I can nurse and read and go over math facts and do all this stuff. It just became like a way of life. And we don't have to fit it all into these hours. We can do stuff in the evening. We can do stuff over the summer, whatever. We can travel with my husband when he's TDY. We would go out to Colorado or out to, other places and be with him. And it was definitely just the flexibility of it all was really appealing. Now, a lot of that flexibility then we got lost once kids start getting into high school, and it's less flexible, but still, at that point, it was like, no, I see where we're going with this, and I don't want to, change and give up what we have here.
Right. And man, when you said that about being on the couch and nursing, it just floods the memories back, because how many years were we doing that, where we're doing our read alouds, nursing a baby? I had even my little boys, now they'd be embarrassed if they heard this, but they would nurse their stuffed animals because they were just, welcoming babies and just, and like you said, we never intended to have a big family either. And so that's maybe an interview for another day.
Yeah, right.
But it became intertwined, right? The whole, seasons of life and taking a little bit of time off to have a baby and kind of make that adjustment. Exactly. And that the kids really did learn from that. I know a lot of times we tend to just get focused on, this is interrupting my schedule, but the whole schedule is supposed to serve the family, and we don't serve the schedule. So that was something that the Lord had to teach me, was the flexibility. And babies don't always arrive at a school break. So we would create our break around that. So that's a question that I'm sure I've gotten it too, but how do you manage multiple ages and levels, and especially with all these littles? One of the big questions is, how do you homeschool when you have toddlers? And I hear a lot of moms say, oh, I'm going to put him or her in preschool so that I can homeschool. So do you want to address that a little bit? What did that look like for your family?
Yeah. So, and it is a challenge. I mean, I will just say that it is challenging, but I think the first thing is getting rid of your idea that school has to look like everyone's sitting down in desks for 6 hours a day, whatever, when it can also be like people playing, people doing activities, people, whatever, me helping here, there, whatever. And that kind of getting that mindset off is really helpful. And I think another thing that is key for toddler age children, especially, is teaching them how to entertain themselves and not have to be entertained. That's a skill. And saying, here are toys and I want you to play with them. It doesn't just happen like that. I mean, you have to say, here's how you can play. You have to kind of help them play. And then once you have older kids, then they can help teach the younger kids. But, this is how you make up little stories with the little people. And this is how you do things with the Duplos. And this is how, I expect you to be able to entertain yourself and not just have me do all of the entertaining. And that is definitely something to work on, especially with your oldest kids, where it'll just be you and them, really having time where I'm not just the ta-da, cruise director, entertainer person, but I'm doing things and you're alongside me and you're doing things, but you're also not demanding all of my attention. And I think once you have that as an expectation, and other kids, I mean, definitely, I'm the first to say personalities matter here and some are just more difficult. But in general, when that is an expectation and the younger kids pick that up, then they also are like, okay, they go off into whatever play area we have that's around, but not right there. And they do their thing, So that would be my first thing. And then my second thing is we combine as much as possible, not math and grammar generally, but I mean, everything else. We combine science, we combine history, we do a big memory work time where everyone's kind of memorizing the same things, and the younger kids obviously don't get as much out of that, but still it's, we do a lot of stuff together on the couch as much as possible. And the little ones pick up what they can and hear the discussion and everything. But, and again, that's not that rigid. This person's in 6th grade, this person's in 5th grade, this is in 3rd grade, but we're all just doing stuff together. Is kind of how we handled it.
Yeah, that's very similar to what our family ended up doing. And I know that Claire has used a lot of the classical methods, the well-trained mind. And do you do classical conversations as well?
No.
Or is that okay? We ended up using a different curriculum, but a lot of the same, I guess, philosophies, the sit on the couch, read those living books, bring history to life. I never enjoyed history, but now I love it. Our whole family is like, we're history buffs. And that's just because of the books and the way that we went about our education, which kind of evolved. We didn't necessarily set out to have this, but you kind of have to do these things if you have a lot of kids, and you can choose to do that too if you don't have as many, or if your kids are more spaced out. Right. It's just, I think the togetherness factor was a big thing for us. So I'm going to walk you back a little bit, because you mentioned memory work, and let's go maybe a little bit chronologically through like what, I don't know, I know it's not typical for your younger ones, like it was for your older ones. It changes, but what are some things that you have for those early homeschooling years? I know memory work was really big for you, and that's something I kind of gleaned. And even though what we did looked different, I remember some of your blog posts about the importance of memory work at an early age. So do you want to speak to that, and maybe anything else too, for those younger years?
So for me, when I was in 4th grade, we were stationed over in Okinawa, and I had a teacher at Okinawa Christian School who really emphasized memory work. And that was like disciplined memory work. And the stuff that Mrs. Freeman had us memorize, like it's in there. I mean, things like the presidents and 1 Corinthians 13 and, the Star Spangled Banner, 3 verses, just random things like that. We did it, and it was fun, and we had motions, and and it's in there, And so as I started with my older kids, I was like, well, I want to do something similar to that with maybe some poems. And I didn't really have much structure, and we just would kind of start out. I picked passages. I went passages instead of just specific verses. They didn't want it to, but I think there's a beauty in being able to build on week after week to a passage of scripture or something, and then being able to have a chapter or, just a poem stanza, and then having the whole poem or whatever. So that was important to me. So I just kind of randomly picked things and did that. Well, then we did 1 year of classical conversation when our oldest was in 7th grade. And so my friend Christine and I both did it. And we thought, we will be the ones that will be in charge of like a challenge program and everything. And so then we were like, no, it turns out we really like being more in control and not giving up the control. So we're not going to do that. But it had us form our own co-op, which was really great. And so then I did a more formal thing of memory for the younger kids. That was one of the things they did in the afternoon with me while some of the other classes were happening. And so it has been so beneficial to really so that's like I did like a 4-year cycle of memory work with like a Bible, and we do a little timeline and the kings and queens of the presidents each year. And then we do science facts and map work and also a poem stanza. And it's been really good. Just memory, I always tell my kids when they're like, why do we have to do this? Like, memorizing things is actually a muscle, and you have to exercise that and get good at it. And then when you can memorize, then when you're in high school and college and there are actually things that you need to memorize, it will come a lot easier. And our oldest is a lieutenant in the Air Force, and he's a drone pilot. And so when he was off at his pilot training for several of his trainings, he comes back and he's like, Mom, you'll never believe how memory work was actually really important to me. And my friends are all like, man, how can you read something and it just sticks in your brain? It's really hard for us to remember this stuff. And for him, it's very easy to memorize. Like, well, that's because you trained that muscle. So that's actually been a really good thing, just aside from all the facts of why would you need to put scripture in your head? I read an article, I think it was just last summer, about the Chinese church before communism came, and how their warnings afterwards were like, we didn't realize that we wouldn't have access to Bibles. We wouldn't have, what we took for granted. And so I thought, how are we preparing our children? We need to be preparing them to memorize and then just putting scriptures in their minds. And it's been, really good. Like last year, one of the passages we did was Psalm 91 during the first half of the year. And I thought, this is really a good passage for when it's scary times, and now if Verity has a bad dream or something, I can say your memory work to yourself. Remember, he will cover you with his feathers. Under his wings, you will find refuge. His faithfulness is your shield and rampart. You have those things that they can call to mind as well. So you can pick passages that really, if you're having troubles with tongues, we've done James, we've done James too. You can really pick and say, this is an area we're going to work on in our family this year, because we're going to memorize this chapter and it's going to be all about it. So every single week we're going to be reviewing these verses, and it's, just something. So that's been an important thing. And for little kids too, you'd be surprised at what little kids can memorize.
Yes, absolutely. Psalm 91 was one of ours as well. And I love whole chapters. And I've done a few books. I don't know that I could recite them now, yes, but doing it with my kids keeps my memory muscle, because I know, when I had fewer kids, I would go on walks and try to memorize along with the kids during the summer Bible Bee, which is a scripture memory program. And I found that the more I did it, the faster it came. Sure. Yeah. And we haven't done as much poetry memorization as I might like, especially as an English teacher. I kind of wish I could force that one a little bit more, but scripture memory has been a passion of mine as well. And so I know that's definitely something that I'm just amazed that Rayma is our youngest homeschooling. Verity, of course, is her, she has her own special needs, but I'm astonished that sometimes she is picking up the memory work faster than, the 11 and 13-year-old. Like I never count them out. Right. We just fold her in with whatever we're doing. Okay. So early years, you highly recommend memory work. And then I know, our homeschools have changed and morphed over the years, but let's jump into kind of high school. I think a lot of people are intimidated to say you're going to homeschool high school. So you mentioned a co-op. So I'll have you speak a little bit to cooperations with learning and playing to your strengths. And I know one of your strengths is science, which was intimidating to me because I'm the English teacher. Like, I will teach your kids how to write, but please don't ask me to dissect anything. And I would read about your Egyptian mummy, like the chicken, the mummified chicken. And it sounds so great, but that was one of my weak areas. So do you want to speak a little bit to that? How does that look in high school? If for moms that really want to do this long-term and say, what, because for us, our shift from, we can do this elementary school, but there's no way we could do high school, to now looking at what's going on in the public schools and saying, there's no way we can't do high school. There's some stuff out there that, when we first started homeschooling, it just wasn't present, but now, it's part of our reason, it's part of our why for homeschooling. So how do you work through all of that when really we're not equipped to teach high school math, chemistry, all of those things? What did that look like for you with your early kids? And then, has it changed, or have you kind of fallen into a pattern?
Sure. Okay. So like I said, when Nathan was in 7th grade, Christine and I were thinking we're going to start the classical conversations challenge program. And then we were like, no, we really aren't. So I think my advice to people is try to find other people around you who are on the same page and work together, because that's the thing. It really is hard. You can't do it all you can't do it all well when you come to high school, as far as I'm going to teach you all these things, and you can throw books in front of them. And, there are subjects that works well with, and then there's others that it's difficult, or maybe you don't have the understanding to maybe teach chemistry, or they have questions and you don't have answers. What do you do? So that definitely is, my advice would be to look around and see people who you can partner with. And so we did that, Christine and I, and we started a little co-op, and we only had about 5 families in it for most of the time. They weren't always the exact same 5. There were 3 of us that were kind of foundational members. And then the other 2 or 3 would kind of, come and go. Maybe they had different kids, different ages or whatever, that just didn't always weren't there or came in later or whatever. But that was, wow, what a blessing. That gave us the flexibility. We took several long trips during that. All of our families did, but we could, Zoom in, and it was just very flexible. And we could also, I don't know, just kind of tailor it to what the group of kids was there. So working cooperatively is definitely the way to go there. Now here, 4 years ago, we moved, it'll be 4 years in August. Wow, that's crazy. We moved back here to Wright Pat, and I didn't know people, and I just was tired. I'll just say very tired. And so 2 years ago, there was a new co-op that started here, I guess you could say an extension program called PEP, Providence Extension Program. And so that's what we have put the girls in. And that's a 2-day week, university model one. But again, I'm not teaching all of the subjects, although we were still homeschooling in that I was helping and, kind of getting things. If they had questions, they were coming, but still it was, and I am going to be teaching there next year. I'm going to be teaching chemistry there. So I'll be back in it again, but definitely cooperation we have done a few online classes, and some kids that's worked better than others. I think that's also just kind of personality, and there still needs to be oversight. And sometimes I'm just too busy to oversee. And for some people it's fine. And for other kids, that hasn't been as fine. So I definitely, I knew that wasn't going to be the way we were going to go for all of it. Just do all Veritas or all whatever, even though those are great classes. I knew I wanted more interaction and everything. So.
Yeah, we have done different things as far as co-ops. We didn't do any co-ops early on. And then we've landed here in Colorado. So we also have retired, and, Lord willing, this is our forever earthly home. We'll see. But same thing. When we first got here, I found a co-op. My oldest, Karis, needed chemistry, and then Tobin needed biology. And I've already told you, I don't do science. So we found this co-op, put them in there. And that was during the time when Verity was tiny, and we had a bazillion medical appointments, and it was just a whole other journey. And so we were drowning at home, and I needed that help. Even if we had not had all those other issues, I knew I couldn't do those things. And then for us, Ted's mom is a retired math teacher. So she has taken on high school math for us, and she FaceTimes with the kids. And I'm like, yes, Arden has graduated, so she can take on Lucan.
Awesome.
I'm like, I can do the math, but for me, that was just a huge blessing. And like you're saying, it doesn't have to be a big organization. Where we are now, there's, I think, 250 families. So it is big. It's been in existence for 25-ish years. So it's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And not every place has something like that. And for us, it's 1 day a week. And I pick things, especially for my older kids, that I really need them to get. But then it's enrichment. So art and some of the things that I just
you're not going to do. Yeah.
Like go color on the table, that has been a blessing for us as well. Now, also, I'm curious, as the personalities of the kids, the way they're bent and their desires. So you were talking about, some online classes or other modes of getting them education. So for my oldest, she was very self-motivated, give her a checklist. She would literally do it all. Like she would find a way. If I couldn't teach her something, she would just get it done. Not so much with our other kids. And so, and even one now that is just saying she is just not college bound. And so I've realized, okay, we're shifting a little bit. If she's not, we're using the same curriculum, but we don't have to read all this literature. We don't have to do all these things. And maybe I should give her some opportunities, to get some hands-on experiences for where she feels called. So I'm sure you're finding that too, as you go down the line, that not everybody's like that firstborn.
Right. No, for sure. And I think, and this is something for big families to realize, is that kids further down the line often feel a lot of pressure if they don't line up in those exact same molds as their older siblings. And I mean, our first two are both electrical engineers, and our fourth is not wired that way. He has amazing talents. He's very artistic and fun and creative and not mathy. And that's fine. But he felt a lot of pressure, like that we expected him to just be the same. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's never been a goal of mine to have 10 little engineers sitting around the table. Like that doesn't even sound fun and interesting, like, no, I want everyone to be different, that's, I don't know, awesome. But I think they often put that on themselves. And that was kind of a wake up call to me to be like, no, there's a lot of other stuff out there. And then one of my third son, when he was talking about majors in college, was like, well, I guess I'll be an engineer because I don't want to be I don't want to do art or English. Well, okay. I mean, I can actually see you as an engineer, but there's a lot of other things out there. Like I didn't realize that was kind of, this or this, like, no, what about all the things in the middle, So I realized that I'm hoping that I've grown as a parent now to be able to say to the kids, like, you may not know that you need to hear this, but it's actually all just fine that you're not going to be an engineer or you're not bent mathematically or, whatever. That's okay. We support that too, so.
Exactly.
I had to learn.
Yeah. I have found too, and sometimes it is a little comical, even though sometimes I'm horrified that I realize, oh, did we not teach you this? Because you go through it with the older ones. Yeah. And then, and then I feel like we've lost time. And I know, you don't have a special needs child per se, but just by virtue of how many kids there are, you think, I'm sure I taught you this. And, or I'm sure I had this conversation about, you don't have to go to college, because that has come up as well, that, if the Lord is calling you, he's going to equip you and provide you. We want to give you that foundation. But, this is our fourth one, kind of, who is saying, maybe massage therapy school, maybe, cosmetology, something hands-on. And I'm like, okay, so your high school is going to look different if you are absolutely sure. Because I said it's harder, to switch, that if you get to your senior year and say, oh, I do want to do college, that could be difficult. But we've had enough conversations now that I think we're okay. But it is interesting that you feel like, didn't I have this conversation about this here? And maybe you didn't. And so being intentional.
That reminds me of something what you just said. My friend Christine has one of her sons that has not gone to college because he's doing a music recording thing and doing really well. But what she said to him, to kind of flip perspective, was, then this may be the only time you see these works of English, these words. So I really want you to, not that you have to do all of them, I'm not saying that, but like, as far as saying, oh, I don't need any of this stuff, say, this is the only
Yes.
time I may see this because I'm not going to have, English Comp 101 or whatever. And so this is a time when I really can just look and learn and so I can really be well-rounded as I go off into the
Yes.
world without college.
Yes. Good
Which does
point.
not
And
necessarily round you. I'll just have to say that, for sure in
well,
this day and age, but
that's true. That is true. And for us, it has been, let's be more intentional with which
Mhm.
books we choose, because,
Right.
Sunlight, you get a stack. There's a ton. So you know what? I think To Kill a Mockingbird is worth your time. Like, let's
Yes.
do
Right.
that one. Maybe we're not going to do, these, but yes,
Yeah.
like you said, this probably is going to be the only time you have the time to read it, the time
Yes.
to digest it, and really, sit and just be with those thoughts and those
Mhm.
concepts, as well as the language itself with the writing of the
Yeah.
literature. So yes,
Yeah.
awesome. I'm skimming through. We're right at the half hour mark here. So I know we could
Time
probably talk all
flies.
day.
I'm sure.
So I'm going to ask you kind of two sides of the same coin. What are you so thankful that you have done as a homeschool mom or as a homeschool family? What it was something that you are just so glad that you did? And then the flip side, what is something that maybe you would do differently if you had the chance?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, hmm, I don't know.
And it doesn't.
Let me start with the second one, because
Sure.
I feel like all of us have, so many regrets. Like I'm always thinking back, like, oh, if I had just not switched that math program, or if I had switched that math program, or, whatever. With every kid, you can have that thought with so much stuff. And I think what I've come to realize is we really can't put that much we can't put the outcome on ourselves. Really, it's not like we could make a series of decisions that would put our children on the perfect path, and that would never, I mean, for us as well as for them, the journey really is the Lord working in their lives as well as ours. So that's what I tell myself, even through the times when I miss something or whatever, like that's God working, that He allowed that, and He's working in their life, writing their story with those mistakes, and that's kind of taken a lot of the pressure off, because otherwise, I mean, you look back and sure, it's like, oh, we should have done this if only I'd known, because, you have 2020 hindsight. And of course you could see the absolute perfect thing. But, I think when we're in the middle of it, seeking the Lord's will, not choosing anything is not a sin. We're not doing wrong things. We're just making our best effort of, trying to do things with the good of the family, and trying to please the Lord. I think He's using whatever we do. And that is just really what I've had to come to rest in, because obviously there are things that, probably would have worked out better or not, or whatever. But I mean, really in the end, I'm so thankful that I can trust that God is working, and that His plan is superseding all, and that the outcomes do not depend on me, that I can't stop God's plan from happening in my child's life. And there's not any one thing I can do to make that happen. He is working in them. And for me to think otherwise is actually kind of prideful, so that's been a lesson that the Lord has shown me. And I will not say that I am perfect at this, but I do think it's helped my perspective, because otherwise, I mean, I think you can just be like, oh, I should have done all this stuff. And honestly, we're all trying our hardest, and we are asking the Lord for help and guidance. And this is where we are. And this is what God is using in our kids' lives to mold them into who He wants them to be.
Thank you so much for that. I hope that's an encouragement to the others. It is to me. It's a good reminder, because I wrestle with the same things of the regret, the guilt that year after Verity was born. I mean, so it deeply affected us. There were issues. I mean, we're still digging through some of that. But like you said, we were doing the best we could with what we had, and God knew that was going to happen. And you're right, that the freedom in saying He is writing my child, my teenager, my young adult son or daughter's story. It's not my story, but I think you're right that especially as homeschool moms, like not only are we the wife and the mom, we're the teacher, we hold it all together and we put that on ourselves of, our kids are a reflection of our work kind of. And,
Yes.
we want that nice family photo. We want it all to look great, Instagram
Right.
perfect. And the reality
Yeah, it doesn't
it's
always.
not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that word. That was really good. Are there any like, wow, I'm so glad we had that experience or did this and it
I'm
could be a
sure there
family
are.
thing, not necessarily a homeschool
Well,
thing. I mean, for me, looking onto your family, I'm so glad y'all got to go to Hawaii. Like what an awesome
that's
opportunity,
right. And let me just say, if military families are out there listening, you absolutely should try Space Age travel, because we've taken 2 Space Age trips, one to Hawaii, and there were 11 of us. I was newly pregnant with Verity at the time. And then we went to Germany and there were 10 of us. Our oldest 2 were in college, so they couldn't go.
Okay.
And it's, you have to be homeschooling to do this. We went in February both times, and it was amazing. It was definitely faith stretching to be, but now that I'm hearing all these stories of how people are flying now and flights getting canceled stuff, I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of like space age travel. But the difference is we don't pay. So it's okay to have all the flexibility like that and things to happen and whatever. So yeah, so definitely military families take advantage of that. That has been a true perk of homeschooling, is being able to travel, and even around just, taking trips within the continental United States, having that flexibility to be able to travel. And I think a lot of times with big families, especially, it's like, oh, we're not going to go anywhere. That's just too much work. But now with Airbnbs, and it's just, you can do things like that so much easily. I didn't want my kids to say, oh, we grew up in a big family and we never went anywhere,
Yes.
and, well, no,
Yes.
I want them to see our country, to see other places,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. We are thankful. And it's fun now that the kids are older, they'll come back and you sit around and you share memories, and those times are the times that come up.
Yes.
Oh, remember when we got to go here? Remember when we did the bike tour of DC at night? Remember when, we did this or that? So absolutely. Well, all right. We should wrap up. Are there any last words that maybe we didn't touch on with the questions, that if you were talking to a new homeschooler or maybe your younger self, anything that you would want to impart?
Let me just say real quick, because we didn't really talk about, this is the question that I get asked all the time, which is teaching science to younger kids. And so, what is the curriculum you recommend? And let me just say, we're all really busy and you have such a struggle with what to emphasize, right? And so we have always emphasized math and English and, grammar, and also to some degree Latin for the older kids. And we're going to start again with the younger kids now. But so what about science? Well, we did not do a science curriculum when they're little. We just don't. We don't start that until junior high. And we have them, instead, I think it's really important to do a lot of reading, obviously build up that vocabulary. We do the memory work so that they have some kind of pegs to hang stuff on, but then also just really to raise children who are curious and ask why and notice details and just observe things, because that's what you need when you're an older science age. So I always encourage people, I'm like, put out bird feeders, start gardens, and learn within yourselves to identify, some birds. How about trees? Oh, I know maples and oak trees. So now let's look at why this maple tree is different than this other maple tree. What are the differences? What are, just when you learn, and identifying bugs and things like that. Just when you have your kids be interested and just kind of learn random things along the way, then when they get into high school and they actually have the tools they need to ask questions and do the actual experiments. Because with a lot of kids around, little kids, we're not breaking out the junior chemistry sets all the time. But then once we get into high school, then I do have good quality lab equipment. And we do this with friends, because that keeps me accountable as well, we do all that. So that, I think that's the question I get asked the most. And my answer is like, don't put this ton of pressure on this. Just observe. It's a beautiful world that God's made. Give glory to God and notice all these details. And then that really is helpful. And then I think the other thing, let me just close with, that is kind of the theme that Christine and I had for our co-op. And that's really the story of the boy who offered his loaves and fishes to Jesus. That was kind of our theme, because, with homeschooling and parenting, anything we bring to the table is obviously like completely woefully inadequate, but we are just faithfully offering that to the Lord and trusting that he's going to do a miracle and increase our efforts and work miracles in our hearts and also in our children's lives. And so that has been kind of my little theme picture, ever since we figured that. It's like, yes, that's what we're doing. That's the motivation, is we're faithfully offering our puny little loaves and fishes and seeing what God will do with that in our children. Amen. It's really neat to see.
And along with that, you hear about the gaps in education, and everybody has gaps, right? And I remember early on just being overwhelmed with these babies that God was sending us, and knowing no gaps, like chasms. There are going to be chasms, Lord, that I just can't get there. But yes, we bring our loaves and fishes, we show up, we pray, and the Lord is so faithful. And I just have this vision of him covering the chasms with his grace, and they're not going to fall down. He's going to equip them with what they need when they need it. And I've always prayed that God would put up that passion in the hearts of our kids for what he wanted them to do, that if we weren't able to give it to them, or, that he would put a mentor in their life, or just that burning desire to go to the library and learn. And I'm telling you, I've seen that play out in our kids. I know you have with yours. You've launched them, and they're just these desires and interests that, where do they come from? Well, God put them there. So he's going to fan those flames. So he's going to take care of all of that. Thank you so much again for sharing this time with us. This has been fantastic. Okay. I have not hopped over onto Facebook to see if there are any questions. So we'll do that afterwards. Claire's in the group, we'll type some answers if there are questions, and we'd love to hear from you how this was for you. But I know I've been blessed and encouraged, but the only thing better would be sitting at a coffee shop, getting to just chat for a couple hours. So maybe one of these days we're going to make it out to Colorado. Yep. And actually, we are coming your way. I'll message you later. We're coming to Ohio for just a short time, but we're going to pass through as we do our family vacation, the first one in a while. All right. So take care, everyone. We will close it out for now.